Trained by day, Kyle Wigginton podcast by night, all day.
We can discuss my journey to Juggaloism if you like.
Well, dude, I think we just start right there.
Yeah.
Nathan, tape. So tell me, like, Juggalos fascinate me.
Sure. Me too.
Go ahead and, I'm sure they fascinate your movie right there. Yeah. Offramp.
That's right. Offramp.
So was this the reason that you decided to get into the Juggalo lifestyle, or is that like something?
Yeah. So it kind of all started. I mean, I think, obviously Juggalos we're all kind of aware of them. I remember buying the Insane Clown Posse, Who's Going Chicken Hunting single, maxi cassette single when I was a kid, but it wasn't like exactly my thing, but I thought it was like, funny and wild and whatever. And fast forward about, I don't know, 10, 15 years or something until we start getting into like the kind of mid 2000s, 2006, 2000, whatever. And there started to be like more Juggalos kind of in the zeitgeist, Vice was doing a lot of coverage of Juggalos and, all that kind of stuff. There was, of course, the Juggalo March. I forget exactly what year that was. But anyway, the point is I was just kind of like, I got more aware of the culture because at first it was just like a band. And then I started to like learn about the culture. And I watched a documentary called American Juggalo. It was like a 30-minute doc. And it was the first, according to a lot of Juggalos, there's things they don't like in it. But for me, it was the first one that really introduced me to the idea of like Juggalo family love. This like idea that like, if you're a Juggalo, you're family. And it's like this community kind of thing that went just beyond liking a band and going and seeing them. And kind of like Deadheads and like those other kind of like cultures. So that really fascinated me, and I had just this idea and this image, of two Juggalos, like, doing something crazy in the woods, like basically the image that is the like end of the film came into my head, which I guess we can talk about because it's been out for a while. So the point, whenever they cut out the baby out of the dead woman's stomach, that was just this image that like came into my head. And it was like, this is what a Juggalo miracle would be.
Yeah.
And the song Miracles, of course, was also like popular and mimicked and mocked and things like that. So all that kind of came together. So it was this idea of like, what is a Juggalo miracle? So, and that idea of like family love and whatever. And I thought, what a wild idea. These people who are so judged and, perceived a certain way, have this kind of like other really beautiful human idea. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that made just like a really fascinating idea to make a movie. So that's really where it started. And then as I started making and writing it, then I started, of course, getting way more into it and then met a bunch of Juggalos, mainly starting with one guy named Scott Donahue, who runs FaygoLovers.net, which is like the biggest fan site.
What is their fascination with Faygo, first of all?
So the fascination with Faygo is apparently because like Faygo is the kind of, it's like Big Shot is here, right?
Okay.
It's like the local soda that in Detroit and in Michigan is like the, super sweet, a lot of flavors.
Yeah.
Very, like I said, Big Shot is very similar, although I think Faygo's larger. And funny enough, interesting tidbit about Faygo is that Scott, who plays Silas in the film, his wife is related to the Fagesons, the family that started Faygo.
Oh, wow.
So, but apparently it was originally like this one family that was like Fagesons and RC Cola. And you can't have, apparently there's like a Jewish law that you can't have like a competing business against somebody in your family or something like that.
Okay.
So, something I'm probably misquoting, but it's something like that. So basically Faygo moved to Michigan and RC stayed in the Northeast. And so those are apparently the same families. But anyway, so from what I understand, Faygo became just because ICP loved Faygo because they loved sugary sodas and they grew up in the Michigan area. That was kind of their stuff. And so I don't know exactly when, but then at some point they just started like spraying Faygo at their shows.
Yeah.
And so now it's a really huge thing that like being sprayed by the Faygo is like, if you go see ICP, it is an essential part of an ICP show.
Yeah. It's like you're being touched by God.
You're being baptized in Faygo. That's how I equated it the first time.
What a sticky thing though, dude.
It is. But here's a funny detail. These are the kind of things that I love, like the tidbits you learn, like getting to know Juggalos and stuff. apparently when they first started doing it, they were using, full flavored Faygo, but because with the sugar and everything, but apparently like everything was getting destroyed and everything smelled terrible. So at some point they decided to switch to diet, because the diet, like once it dries, is just like salt. So now it's always diet. And the most common, they use different, colors for different shows. Like when they do like their red show or their green, they have like colors. And so they'll do those. But the most common, can you guess what the most common Faygo that they use to spray is?
Watermelon? I don't know.
No, it's root beer, diet root beer.
Why is that?
I think just because it smells good. Huh. And so anyway, so lots of, so that's kind of the thing. And now it's like such a iconic part of their show that like when they play, they have like these buckets out there and the clowns come out and like people dressed as clowns come out and like just take it and like rip it off and like shoot. And like, so like the first gathering I went to in 2021, where I was filming a lot of stuff that ended up in Offramp, like all the behind the scene. I mean, kind of like, because there's all these like cutaways to moments at the actual gathering. I was able to have like a pit pass because of Scotty D hooked me up with one.
That's awesome.
And so I was in there taking pictures, I had my camera, but of course, every time they come, you'd have to like you'd see them coming with the stuff and be like, and like hide my camera. So I didn't get all splashed at Faygo.
So Scotty D is one of the actors in the film?
No, there's two Scotts. Scott Turner Schofield is the actor who plays Silas. Scotty D is the Juggalo who I met, who's he's the one who kind of like really, he was like the gatekeeper in a lot of ways. Like he like, vetted me and like we talked and he was like realized, because there's a lot of people who are trying to kind of exploit Juggalos and like for comedic value and whatever. Right. And once he realized that I was like trying to do something that was sincere and like interesting and not just trying to just make a joke, he like let me in. I met all his friends and it really went from there. So I really got to know a lot of really great Juggalos and now consider myself a Juggalo.
That's awesome. Yeah, I hang out with a lot of people that also call themselves Juggalos. So I mean, I've learned a lot about the culture and stuff, and they go to the floats and they go to the did you go to the float?
I haven't been to the float yet, but I hear it's great.
Yeah, I mean they have a good time. It's crazy how large the community is, but it's also crazy how misunderstood the community is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of communities in this country are misunderstood. I also think that like this concept of community, one of the things that really fascinates me so much, and like one of the things that making this film about Juggalos and spending so much time, with them, is that there really isn't another like community that I've experienced where once you kind of go in there and you're all like, I'm a Juggalo, then everybody kind of embraces you. Like there's not really, like, for instance, there was just Ouija Mac played last week and we went, here at the Goat and we went and it's like, it's funny because you just feel so much more like comfortable just talking to random people because you're all Juggalos and you're all there for the same thing. Whereas even if you go see a band that you like, we go see LCD Sound System, great show, love that band, but like, it's not like, it's not the same sort of weird, like there's not that same like super friendliness over that shared thing. Whereas the Juggalos have this like, this love and this idea over this shared idea, this shared, thing that they love. And I just find that so interesting because I think communities don't like it, even as a filmmaker in a filmmaking community. That's one place where you kind of, you go to film festivals and there's a little bit more of that, like talking to random people,
but it's still competitive,
but there's a competitiveness to it. I mean, I do find that filmmakers are supportive of each other. Yeah,
absolutely. But I mean, like, it's like almost like we're all trying to compete against something, but when the Juggalo culture, it's like, there's no competitiveness, right? Is that what makes it like feel that way?
I think so. I mean, I there is competitiveness within the Juggalo community, but I guess what I'm saying is that like, I don't know. There's a bit, people are just more friendly and outwardly like willing to talk with you about virtually anything because of this shared experience, where I find other shared experiences don't give that same like freedom, or maybe it's not freedom. Maybe it's just that like energy, because I think it's that idea of identifying as something. Cause I think the Juggalos are like, they're like, this is my, I'm a Juggalo, and that desire to belong to something and to kind of, claim it is really pretty powerful. And I think it's interesting because I think as an American culture, there's not other things that we necessarily, I mean, maybe people do, you know, you go see a football game, for instance, you're all having a shared experience. And yeah, you may like talk to those people about like the football game, and there may be a certain amount of like community, but it doesn't go beyond like superficial. Whereas with a lot of juggalos, I feel like it quickly goes beyond superficial.
What do you think the difference is? Like, because there's got to be something in there, right?
I don't know. I mean, like I said, I think it's that idea that people are a part of something, and that thing that they're a part of has this sort of idea and this creed of acceptance, which is one of the concepts that we explore so much in the film, is this idea of acceptance, because, you know, juggalos, they want to be very accepting, and they, you know, most of them are very accepting and are very like open to people of different races or gender identities or sexualities or anything, or, you know, whatever, because there's a certain thing that they feel like they were like poor growing up, and that they're like, you know, fuck all this, you know, division and whatever. So
it's like that outcast thing. Like we're all outcasts and we're all coming together.
Exactly.
Yeah. Where it's very different if you go to a football game. It's like everyone's doing that, right?
Yeah. But I mean, and you know what I mean? There is a bit of a shared experience. Yeah, you're going to high five. You're going to like have a fun time. And like, there is a bit of that sort of community, but it kind of ends there in a way. Whereas what I find with juggalos is there's this other thing that like people like, they just want to talk to you about the things. And I don't know, it's just a little bit more, I think it's that feeling of, like I say, I think it's that feeling of belonging and like sort of an ownership, like they are something and there's a bit more of an identity. Whereas it's like, I mean, I've been a Saints fan for all my life, but like, do I identify as a Saints fan? Do you know what I mean? Like, that like, it's not the same level of identity, I think, you know?
You're like, I'm from New Orleans. I watch the Saints, but I am a juggalo.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, the juggalo thing for me really is more that I you know, I mean, I like ICP. They're cool. I like a lot of the music, but it's more about the ideology and the sort of people, to me, is what I find really.
I wonder if that was always their intention. Because like I remember back in the day when I first heard ICP, it was like The Great Malenko. And that was some awesome songs. Like, who are these fucking people?
Yeah.
And then when I finally moved down here and started hanging out with Andrew and them, who are juggalos, and they were always telling me they're going to the gathering, this and that. I wonder if like the intention behind their music and stuff was always, let's create a community.
I mean, I feel like it was probably an evolution, because I think that who could have really, I think everybody wants to have, every musician would love to have legions of fans, obviously, and they all dream of having legions of fans and dream of, you know, this kind of thing. But I think there probably something like surprised them. My guess is the way that it probably just started, because the other thing too is that like the first gathering of the Juggalos was like I don't remember where exactly, but it was like it wasn't outdoors. It was like in a stadium. And apparently it was a huge disaster. Like the first two were apparently there in like a stadium. And I think that there was like kind of, I don't know, who knows what their real intentions are. They say that they're, you know, but to me, it feels like a kind of evolution. And it feels like they kind of like started to recognize what they kind of had and kind of like built on it. Because one thing is like as much as it is about ICP, and they always like, they created it and it's, you know, from their fans, I truly believe that Juggaloism belongs to Juggalos more than it belongs to ICP, because I think that there is this thing that these people have they're the ones who have created the subculture, because they're the ones who have made them, you know, their fandom has kept it alive. I mean, who else has been if you think about like another group that's been around for 30 years.
That's crazy, yeah.
And has like legions of fans that are as dedicated as they are. I mean, there's not as many as there once was. It's but it's still like, to say that every year, you know, that 5,000 people are going to go to the gathering of the Juggalos, and they're all going to save everything they can to go that. When I went, I met people who had like, somebody had, you know, hitchhiked there. Other people had driven, you know, through the night for like 26 hours. I mean, like, it's like, this is just, you know, the biggest thing for so many of these people's lives. And it's really cool to see, because it's like, it's this really interesting, wild melting pot, you know?
So are there any crazy things that you've seen or experienced at these gatherings that people might not know?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some wild things and then heard a lot of wild stories. A lot of our stories ended up in the film. When I was getting to know a couple of, because there's a few of our real Juggalo friends like Scotty D and Chris, who also goes by Mankini, and Jimmy Soda. They're like three friends, and they all ended up, in the film, and I got to know them and got to be really close with them. And so like Jimmy like introduced me to, tons of people, and, told me wild stories. And a lot of those stories ended up in the movie, and either like the characters were saying them because it just like added so much flavor. And it was just so funny. I mean, like, for instance, one of the things I did see was a guy who had a stapler, and he was letting people like staple money on him. And he was like, if you staple the money on me, I get to keep the money. But he had his shirt off and had like, $20 something in one stapled to his body.
Jesus.
And there's, the story where somebody did like make a bet to like cut their own nipples off with a razor blade. And like, he was like going to do it. Like he was going to do it either way. And then somebody bet him. And so that story ended up in there.
So he really did it?
Apparently he really did. I didn't see it. The sex table is also a real story. There's a joke in it about a sex table where somebody gets on all fours and acts like a table, and people have sex on top of them. And that made it into the film. So there's a lot of those. I mean, I've seen a lot of buttholes. You definitely see a lot of buttholes.
Yeah. Could you explain that, please?
Yeah, I'll do my best. I don't really know that I can. But what I will say is that Juggalos are really obsessed with showing their buttholes. And they often say it and ask for you to show your butthole and say, show your butthole. In fact, there's a guy named Butthole Ben who is in Offramp, and we mention him in the film. And he's a very nice guy. He's a very tall, hairy man. But he's very notorious for showing his butthole everywhere. So a lot of buttholes get shown. The thing is that Juggalos are, they are clowns. They are wicked clowns, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like there is a very much a prankster mentality to Juggalos. So you kind of have to be aware of that. I'm sure you've experienced that with, Andrew and whatever.
Absolutely.
There's a little like, those kids that you're friends, and you're kind of like, oh, all right.
Dude, I don't know if I can take him serious. I think the first time he said, show me your butthole, I was like, what are you fucking talking about, dude? He's like, that's a whole thing. And I'm like, you're joking, right? He's like, no.
Yeah.
You show your butthole. There
was this last gathering in 24. There was a couple Juggalos who had printed a flag out of their friend's butthole that was enlarged. So it was a large, 6 foot by 4 foot butthole. And they wanted you to autograph it. And they're like, sign his butthole, please sign his butthole. And then there's also poop dollars, which is where people take $1 and cover it in poop, and then put it on the ground. And I remember, I think it was this last one, I was walking away, leaving the gathering at night, and I saw some money on the ground. And at first I was like, oh, there's money. And then I look over and see some Juggalos snickering. And I was like, there is definitely poop on that $1. So yeah, there's some of that. It is a bunch of Juggalos camping out in the woods for a while. So by the end, the trash cans get pretty funky, and the portalettes get pretty funky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just humans in general at a concert, man.
Yeah.
It's pretty rough. That's why I don't stay around large groups of humans anymore.
Yeah. Well, and because they all camp, a lot of them camp there and stuff. Mm-hmm. One of the other things I experienced was when we first got there, is at night, a lot of them, because a lot of Juggalos walk around and have megaphones.
Okay.
And they do a couple of things with them. One, they just there's this wild roasting culture in Juggalos, particularly when it comes to JCW, the wrestling.
Okay.
So they're really big into wrestling, and ICP's always been really big into wrestling. And actually Violent J's really starting to shift a lot more into the wrestling. It's just the JCW is getting bigger and, kind of becoming even bigger, which is another part of the thing they do Juggalo Championship Wrestling or Juggalo Championship Wrestling. But at the gathering, at basically at night, they have all these wrestling shows, and a lot of the Juggalos will go around with their megaphones, and they'll just sit there and shit talk the people on that are whatever that are wrestling, and they'll just constantly and it's so strange because some of them aren't even talking that loudly, and they're talking to each other, and it's very peculiar. But they do that, and then they also will like in the middle of the night as they're walking around, will just hit the like boop, boop, and they'll be like "fuck yo sleep," because that's one of the phrases that they just try to. They just think it's funny to keep people up. I was like, that's why I usually when I go, I stay at a hotel because I'm like I need to go to sleep.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I was just going to ask you, like, if they're doing that all night, are there fights there? Because it seems like that would aggravate people and they would get into fights.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying there aren't, and there haven't been some fights, but most people know. It's one of the most beautiful things about the gathering, which is really is true in my experience. What I have experienced is that there really is like this. It's kind of like you're like, God, you can see this weird way where like society could be better because everyone, when they're at the gathering, I think it's that shared experience of like, we are Juggalos and this is our identity. So they're like, people are very kind. Like if you drop something, like if you drop $20 on the ground, other than it being a poop dollar, if somebody like saw you drop your money, they would be like, hey, you dropped your money. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Because they, especially there at the gathering and amongst Juggalos, they hate stealing. They hate taking advantage of people. They want everyone to really, truly have a good time. And it really is pretty wild. Like people are just like very giving. They're much more like, here, eat this food. We've done, like, I have not personally ever experienced a fight. I'm sure that they have happened because some people, just kind of can't control it. But most people, I mean, more what happens is that they will fight like people on stage. Like the Juggalos will like hate a performer and like throw shit at them. And that's more where the hate will come from. Community hate. Like there's a couple of things, like for instance, like Lardy B, who is like this big girl who like is a rapper who's been there a few times, but Lardy's like, I want you to throw food at me. And so so like it's like she's got like Twinkies and ho-hos and ham and whatever just like being thrown on the stage. But like there have been the stories of like some Juggalos like throwing batteries, heating up batteries and throwing it at the stage.
What?
So like if for whatever reason, especially if they just like don't like the performer or something, they'll like, I don't know, boo and shit talk and throw shit at them and whatever. So that's more but I think they feel that it's okay to do that. I guess like that's different than doing it to each other. I suppose. I don't know. I'm not sure. I can't really I'm just saying that's what I have seen.
You know what we should do? We should like take that mentality and move it into politics. Just throw all the batteries at them.
I would love to throw some batteries.
It's crazy, dude.
Yeah, some slingshots. So yeah, like and they'll do like water balloons and whatever. And so like that's the kind of like, but there is a very much an attitude of like, now we're at the gathering, like let's have fun. You know what I mean? It's really a wild community in a very good way. And that's kind of the spirit that I was trying to make with the film. And it is something that I experienced and I was really like floored by. I was like, wow, this is not what you expect. You expect these folks with, pink hair and facial tattoos and nose rings and like, but for these people who can be seen this way, to be as giving and accepting and kind and like really truly, like I said, for those 4 days, people are like nicer than they ever have been. And I truly was feeling like I was like, God, it really is. If the world was more like this, it would be a better place because people would just be a little bit more accepting.
Yeah. It's like controlled chaos.
Yes.
I love it. That's what I think the whole filmmaking process is too. It's like taking all these people and all these things and like making a product out of it.
Yeah.
How did you get into filmmaking?
Yeah. So it's always been kind of a love of mine. I, was like watching movie, as a kid, my parents were always into movies and would always show me, not like anything really out of the box, but still like, it was just always like important, like having a movie night was always something we did. And, so movies like Raising Arizona were really like impactful to me as a kid, just like, and, of course, like Tarantino and things like that. So those filmmakers really like sparked my love and desire to kind of research more. So I kind of always wanted to. I went to when I went to school, my undergrad was like in more like television and photography. And then I went to grad school for filmmaking at Loyola Marymount in Los Angeles. And then when I graduated, I was kind of like unsure of what to do. And my friends, the movie industry locally here in New Orleans, it kind of like started to take off. This is around 2006, 2007. 2007. And I came back home for like a high school reunion in 2007. And like my friend Mike Kennedy was working on a job and was like, I went and worked with him. And then he was like, you got to keep coming back. So I stayed. I changed my ticket back to LA like 4 different times. I worked in the lighting department. And I changed my ticket back to LA like 4 different times. And so by the 4th time, I was like, well,
you kept working.
I just got to come back. So, because there was really at the time in LA, I wasn't, it's hard to kind of get that in, I think, as a, just a recent film school grad. And it was kind of like I did one really cool thing afterwards, which is a web series called Clark and Michael, which I was one of the DPs of, which was Clark Duke and Michael Sarah, who are 2 awesome guys. And anyway, we did this like web series. It's really funny if you get a chance to check it out. It's hilarious. But that was like, it just wasn't, it's hard. There's not a lot of opportunities. I wasn't really making them most of them. And coming back home, there was just like, kind of like, oh, here's this opportunity. And so it was kind of like that big fish in a small pond, because I had, studied film and photography and cinematography. So it was kind of a natural thing to do lighting. And so I worked in lighting for about I was like an electrician and set guy for about 5 years. And then I started gaffing. So then I kind of I became a gaffer, a chief lighting technician, and did that for about 10 years. And that's where we met. I was doing the hollers. So I did that for about 10 years. And then during the pandemic, I always wanted to make movies, and I would make music videos. Of course, I did films in film school, and I did music videos, and I would shoot a couple of features here and there as a DP. And I was always kind of trying to do both of those things as I was, gaffing.
That's a lot.
It was a lot.
Yeah. If you're doing 12-hour days gaffing and then you're going and doing your own things too, that's so much.
It is. A lot of times, it was good. A couple of good things. One is that you work, but then you're off a lot of times for at least a month or more or something. Mm-hmm. And so that was really good in those times to try to do some of that stuff. And then I was really lucky too. The guys that I worked with at the time before I was gaffing, the guys I worked with would kind of let me come and go a little bit. So, but it was a lot. But then, yeah, and during the pandemic in 2020, I was well, I was a little disillusioned. I was pretty successful as a gaffer. But I was a little bit this is a great job, but it's not my passion. And my co-writer Tim and I had written this script. We started writing it in 2015, and it would just kind of it was always kind of this thing that we were going to eventually do, maybe. And then during the pandemic, it was okay, well, it's time, let's do it. And it was a great decision.
That was a wake-up call for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think having the time to sit around and kind of really just be with your thoughts, and just kind of assess things. I think, so often we're so busy with life that and the pandemic was well, I mean, we weren't making movies for, 3 to 6 months for sure. So it was a really, kind of a reset. I really spent some time just thinking and wondering if, what I was really doing. And it was well, if I'm not going to do this now, then when? And, but got to give it a shot. And like I said, it was a great decision. I'm very glad I did. Yeah.
I mean, the amount of work that it takes to make a feature film is crazy. So I commend anyone who can actually get through that process.
Absolutely.
Did you learn a lot from this one right here that you're going to use in your next film? So I know you were saying you already had your next one kind of ready to go.
Yes, absolutely. I think everything is, I think every creative pursuit is a learning experience. And I think if we shut ourselves off to the learning of, what we can learn, I mean, that's when you're going to start regressing 100%, if not more. I mean, I think you have to stay open. And I think even people I think Martin Scorsese probably still learns something every movie that he makes, you know, and I think as many as he's made, you know, so I think you always try to make, you know, learn and keep yourself open. And I learned a ton. I mean, I had definitely spent a lot of time on sets, and I had made a number of shorts, and I, you know, had a pretty good idea of like what I was going to do, but you know, what changed and how it opened up. It just was dramatic. You know, it's just making your own film is just like you said, it's impossible.
It really is. Yeah.
And you're right. Any person who takes and makes any feature film, every movie is a miracle.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that. And I think, you know, this one even more so, but I, you know, and it was for me. And again, I think, it is absolutely so much work. So yeah, there's plenty that I'm going to take from this one to the next one. And hopefully in the next one, I'll learn something and take to another one.
Yeah. I mean, can you say anything about the next one? Is it going to be kind of the same genre, or is it going to be something else?
Yeah, absolutely. We can talk about it. It's going to be something different. I mean, a lot of people have asked for Offramp too, and I would love to do that. You know, but hopefully somebody else wants to pay for it. You know, it'd be nice. But you know, I would love to. I love these characters, and I think there's some. But you know, you want to, as a filmmaker, you want to make a number of things. You know, you don't want to just make one thing. So the next one that we're working on now, my co-writer and I have written 3 different scripts since Offramp. But we think we found the one that is the right thing now, and it's titled non-player character, like an NPC, and it is the kind of tagline we've been going for is the cure for male loneliness a vigilante alter ego, and it's a bit of a like surrealist vigilante movie that takes place kind of in modern internet culture. The main character Hank is a internet content moderator, and he like watches the worst shit, you know, on the internet, and he sees a video that he thinks he knows a person in, and so he kind of goes to investigate, and a bunch of wacky shit happens.
I like this, dude. It's like a video game.
Yeah.
He goes on a journey.
Yeah, exactly. So it's cool. I mean, we want to do something. I don't know. You always want to do something a little different, and I think this one has something, I don't know. I feel like I feel really excited about what we're talking about. I think there's some really interesting things to talk about here. It's a bit of a challenge because it's not quite as, you know, not every movie is going to be like as positive as the other one or negative. You know, you're always looking to make something different and to talk about something different.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I guess what I mean is that like Offramp is a real like hopeful film.
Okay.
I think. I mean, it's more about like the good that we are doing in a way, or the good within us. NPC is a little bit more about maybe not what's not so good about some of us, but it's still, I think, about trying to be human, and I think they're both human, and so that's just kind of like something to explore. You know what I mean? Those are just themes and things to explore. I mean, not every movie, like I think it was somebody said, Simon Pegg, I think I just saw in like the Criterion Closet, he said something which I love, which is like, it's like entertainment is like the most basic form of the way of what to get from a film. Like every film, you know, people, particularly here in the US, where like everyone wants to just be entertained.
Right.
And you're like, well, but if it creates a very interesting discussion, you know, isn't that part of the entertainment? I think that we just get so, I equate it to this. I always talk about this is that, you know, it's funny because like in contrast to say like Soviet cinema, for instance, right? Soviet cinema did not have, you know, capitalism behind it, right? The intent of the movies made in the Soviet era under the Eastern Bloc was not to make movies that made money. The point was to make art, and to make what they saw as that their art was superior to any art anywhere else in the world. And so because of that, the filmmaking has a different like tone, and it's way different. And I think we in the US, because we grew up with Chaplin as opposed to, you know, the man with a movie camera, we have always been on the side of like entertainment. And the most common things in the US are like, to laugh, to cry, to be angry. But even the angry one, it's like most of what it is about the pleasant feelings. I think we have, European cinema and, Eastern Bloc, all European cinema has more commonly looked at all the other emotions that humans have other than just joy.
There's more depth to it.
Yeah. And I think that film has the potential to do that, but people are so focused on the idea of just like having a good time. And you're like, well, some movies are meant to make you have a bad time, but that doesn't mean they're not good. I
think that's just great storytelling. Like you want an entertaining story on top, but for the people that are going to read into the depth of the movie, you want a deeper meaning as well.
Yeah. I think it's just an interesting idea. I just think it's wild. I mean, I get entertained by a movie that makes you feel uncomfortable too. I mean, I think that's a different feeling. I think that just laughing or feeling entertained is like just one of the many things that a movie or any art really can make you feel.
Yeah, we have a very like surface level society these days. I think that's probably why a lot of art goes that way rather than going to the deep meanings of things. I noticed it even up here. Like there are some people that I just can't have certain conversations with because it's nothing on them. It's like they have stressful lives, so they don't want to stretch outside of the box and think of different concepts.
Yeah.
So I'm sure filmmaking is probably the same way. When they watch a film, they don't want to sit down and think about it. They just want to check out.
It's quite common. And that's what a lot of people will say. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people will tell you that they don't want to think about something when they want to, just escapism, which is valid too. I mean, I think that, like I said, I think it's just one of the many things. I think that if film, and like I said, when I say film, I think I speak for kind of all art. For me as a filmmaker, I feel like one of the, why I think film is like the most, is such an incredible art form is it's kind of a culmination of a lot of art forms, right? Mm-hmm. Writing, acting, music, photography, rhythm and dance and like with, and choreography and then other things that are art forms that, as you and I know, having worked on films, but people may not know, but like how special effects is like an art form. Mm-hmm. And the visual effects of creating molds and things like that, and down to the simple things of just how, makeup and hair can like affect a character and can affect these things. So there really is like so much. That's another costume design, production design, like, craft, with a great set. That's like the woodworking that was put into that, there's just so many. It's
crazy. The amount of little pieces that you have to put together to do that. That's why it's like an impossible art form. And you have to have people around you that you trust. Yes. To get them done. Absolutely. Very much so. And when you find those people, you hold on to them and try to work with them as much as you can, Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people, or a lot of ones that I know that are making films, they met each other in film school and they just kind of like stayed there. Their tight knit community was from that. And they pick up people along the way too. But I mean, they started off with that core. Do you think it was different for you going to film school out in LA and then coming out here? Yeah, to some degree. But I think, I feel like I've also like kept a lot of those people along the way. Like for instance, my co-writer, Tim Cairo, we met in 2001 in New York. We both went to like a 6-week like film program at the New York Film Academy in New York. And it was just like, it wasn't like a full film school, but it was like that kind of thing, it was like a 6-week kind of thing. And, that was like my first real introduction. We made like films, and Tim and my other friend Costa and this guy Alpi, we were like we were a group that worked together and made each other's films. And so many years later, Tim and I reconnected, and he had studied to be a lawyer. And then he decided wasn't his thing. And so he decided to go back to school for screenwriting. And so after he graduated, we like reconnected, and that's when we started working on Offramp. So like, I think I kept some of those folks there, but I think, some ways I wonder if staying in LA, would I maybe have had more of a focus on being a filmmaker earlier instead of kind of working in film and being a gaffer and working in the electric, maybe. But I also think that the time I spent working on sets and seeing how other people did them as a gaffer and as a, I always was watching what the DPs and directors were doing and absorbing. It was like I had another 12, 15 years of school as well. And I think, one reason why,
even though Offramp cost a lot of money, it still was a very low budget movie. We were able to, get a lot of favors because of all the people that I met and worked with in film around here. So, when it came to picture cars, I called somebody that, Richard, who I've known for, worked on many movies with, and, special effects. I called Dave Namey, who's somebody I've worked with, you know what I mean? Like those are those things. So, and they all knew me and knew that I was a solid person, worked hard, and, we've been friends. So they, they were willing to do those things. So it's interesting. I mean, I think, I've looked at it both ways and kind of like wondered, if it was like, if maybe staying in LA would have been the thing, but hey, you know what? We're here now, whatever.
Yeah. I think these days you can pretty much do it anywhere, right? If you have the drive to do it.
Yeah. I still wonder, because I think that I still wonder about certain other things, because I feel like I think in some of those bigger markets, there are a bit more of the like decision-making things. I think that some of the investors, the sort of, some of the other things are probably that people who spend the money to make the movies,
the money side of it. Yeah.
I think there's a little bit more of that around here. And I think that, other places, those cities are a little bit, their filmmaking communities are a little bit more central. I love New Orleans and I love a lot of the filmmakers here, but I feel like our community could be a little bit more centralized. And I think there could be a bit stronger, filmmaking community. I think individually the filmmakers that I know here, I think are all really great and are very supportive of each other, which is awesome. But I think that there could be more from the state. Like, I think that even though the state does have an additional 10% for their tax incentive for Louisiana screenwriters, I feel like the state could be doing more for Louisiana filmmakers, because the fact of the matter is, like, the way to keep a sustainable industry is not just from outside money, but it's from like a filmmaker who wants to stay in a place. I mean, I look at a person like, would Philadelphia have a filmmaking community without M. Night Shyamalan? I don't think it really would. I mean, there'd be some, but not the way that he has like set foot and said, this is my hometown. I want to make movies here. And I think that I think, you look at guys like Richard Linklater and what they did for Austin, and, so filmmakers have places that they want to make movies in hometowns. But I think that particularly Louisiana it only is looking for the outside money and not looking at how, if you had a group of filmmakers who were making films in Louisiana at a certain budget level, that the potential that it would have for, long-term infrastructure and long-term businesses. I go back to Austin. Robert Rodriguez, another great example of someone who just said, this is where I want to be. And and everything's going to happen here. And he created a huge industry there, that thing. And he employs a lot of the same people. It's like, these are long-term jobs. This is like, and it's like, that's the real potential. And that's how, the old like LA studio system and how it used to be when these guys that we admire, like, Spielberg and Coppola and Scorsese were like coming up, because they got like, because they lived there, they were all right there, and people were, kind of doing things in the community. All of those people were friends and community and whatever. Scorsese lived in New York, but you know what I mean? You get my point.
Yeah. Yeah. So what could the state do to rectify this? Like, you have some ideas they could do?
Yeah. I think one would just be simply, trying to promote the local filmmakers on a sort of more national level. I can just say from my own personal experience that, as I made a movie that has had a great deal of success for film festivals, and people have recognized it as a quality piece of work. And I've never heard anything from the state ever. I've never had a conversation with anyone. No one's ever reached out. No one's ever like, hey, here's a local filmmaker who made a film that made a bit of a national, impact. Not much, but still something. And I feel like the state doesn't like do very much to promote the work. What you'll see is just for instance, you can just look on like certain Instagram sites and you can see they'll promote the films that have come in, and have put the money here, and which is great. I'm not saying they shouldn't, of course, but I'm saying in addition,
support local.
You could support the local filmmakers too. And again, I think all of them, because I think all of them are, all of the local filmmakers are like, a lot of them are looking for that same kind of sustainability, in a place, as opposed to wanting to leave because, I like New Orleans. Like I love it here, I mean, I have my issues with it too, but I mean, it's home,
Well, I mean, the fact that we have 2 film schools too in town, it's 2, right? It's three. Yeah. I knew Tulane and
Loyola and UNO.
Yeah, I knew UNO had one. I know Loyola had one too. But I mean, 3 film schools, you would think that they would take off and do something.
You are speaking also to a Loyola professor.
Oh, nice.
This last year, I just started at Loyola with in the film department there too. So,
yeah, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, my buddy Miles Doliak, who from Mississippi as well. He's in Offramp. He plays Randy Cox, and he is the chair of the department at Loyola. He and I worked together. I shot 2 or 3 films for him, and we're great friends. So anyway, I started working there recently this last year. So yeah.
Have you found anything, any unique things about teaching?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a culture shock when you go from being like on set as like a gaffer, and even though you work for people, you're still kind of your own boss in a lot of ways. I mean, I like my crew. I mean, I work for the DP and obviously the producers and all those things, but there's still more of a like kind of freelance kind of mentality. And so, just the kind of change of being like the kind of bureaucracy of school is a little bit different. But I mean, ultimately I find it really rewarding. I really enjoy it. It's been a great thing to, it's really fun to be around. Students are really excited about film. One thing when you kind of work in film, a lot of times people can get a little jaded about it. I mean, because it's their job and it can be hard.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I think that the time you spend on set can be a lot. And, I think it's just tough. So one thing that's really exciting is that, film students are really excited, and they're full of passion. And I mean, look, like we were talking before we got on air. I mean, I love film and love cinema and love to watch movies and talk about movies. So for me, it's great to be able to just, hang around and talk about movies.
Yeah. Did you, are any of the, are you teaching, or did the students have to make a film?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if they were having to make films right now, if you're just kind of teaching the, I don't know, the ins and outs of the film.
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
Basically the way the program goes is that by the time they're a senior, they all make a senior film.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's, kind of the culmination of their experience. And so we're trying to kind of, give them a foundational knowledge in their first 3 years. And then in their 4th year, kind of put it all into practice.
Yeah.
What I teach is I teach cinematography and an advanced cinematography. And then I was also helping Miles teach like a production class and including their senior project this year. So, which was really fun. I really enjoyed being able to give them notes on, things I edit as well. So I like have a pretty good handle on, how to, help them with some of those things. So that stuff is really, it's really rewarding.
Yeah. I think these days, cause like a lot of times it seemed like in the past, there was a certain person for every little thing, but it's almost like these days as a filmmaker, you need to have a knowledge of all the skills.
I think that the best film, I think it was Ben Stiller said something like being a director is the job on set that you don't actually have to know anything. But I think the best directors are the ones who actually know everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that, you're not going to like Tarantino knows what lens he wants to use. You know what I mean? Like it's like, and he knows where he wants the camera, and Greta Gerwig knows like what the beats of the scene are. Like these filmmakers aren't just like, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that, I agree that I think that, and especially as an independent filmmaker, the truth is that there is no big studio coming to save you. There's nobody else. You're the one who has to be making the posts and doing all the stuff. And, and it can get very exhausting because, it's many years. Like, let's just say, for instance, this film, this is 2020. It was like, okay, starting. So basically 21, like March of 21 was when it was like, okay, we're doing it, right? And we were planning on doing it in November of 21. And so all that, planning or whatever, we actually had to move it to January of 22. But basically the point is like, so from March of 21, essentially, we shot it in January of 22. We had to do reshoots and some other things. So we basically finished real photography in March of 22. We had our like cast and crew screening. So the film was like completed November of 22. But then it took almost an entire year of, once it was completed, like going through the film festival process before we found where we were going and whatever. Can you kind of explain some of that too? Because that's a very interesting part of the process that I don't think many people know about. Yeah, it's the film festival process is excruciating. It's probably my least favorite part of the process because it's so heartbreaking, and you just put so much of your like time and life and whatever, and it's the greatest thing you've done and your worst thing, all these things, and you're just whatever. So it can be very hard to do it. But I think that it's really interesting because at the beginning of that process, I would say it was like really, but now like after going through it, I actually think that people tell me, they were like, it's about finding the right festival for your film. And I was like, whatever, my film should be good enough to be in everyone. And then I started to realize that that's very true. Like it really is about where, like, does it fit exactly within it? And also as film festivals, it's so like just going through the whole process. I mean, I think the advice I would give people now is like, make a short and try your damnedest to go to every festival that you can, get into everyone you can and go to them, because you have to have that, at least that first experience where you start to get to know the people in the film festival world too. We ended up with kind of landing in a genre space. The film isn't like, it's weirdly like, it's weird because it hurt us in some festivals that were genre related, didn't want it because they didn't think it was genre enough. Other like festivals that may have been more, I guess, prestigious or whatever, maybe they thought that it was too genre. And so it was like this weird kind of space. But we then in the end did end up finding our kind of niche in with a lot of the genre film fest, although we played other ones too, including New Orleans Film Fest. And so it was really kind of in the genre film fest that we really kind of found our footing. And it really was, like I said, it really was about finding those festivals that we worked really well with. So it really is a lot about going to festivals, getting to know the people that are there, because very often, even some of these film festivals that you go to, they have films that are sponsored. Like the way they can even put on the festival is because they're getting money from a film distributor that has a film that they want it to play there. And so you'll see these a big chunk of films that are played at some of these festivals are essentially sponsored. They're essentially paid to be there. Then the film festivals are also have their alumni and people that they, are, and filmmakers that they're coming up. And then they have like basically, a spot for like 2 or 3 films for what they call discovery, which is what they really want. As a film festival, you want to discover a new film that people love. But it's a very like narrow window. And so when you start to realize that that's how narrowed down it gets, and that you're really competing for like 3 spots, maybe in most of these festivals, it's really challenging. And like one of my friends, his wife, works for like a major, film company. And she's like, Sundance won't even answer my calls. She's like, because they're so like focused and so big and so whatever, because the other thing is you have to book, you book the movies that are there, then you have to book the movies that you are going to get the butts and seats to, because you want to have the new film that like the new whatever Ari Aster or whomever, film, so that people are going to come see it. But at the same time, you as the film festival promoter, you want to have the movies that you discovered out there too, because that's kind of like your stamp on the industry, if you will. And so after you get your film made, you get into a festival. Are there buyers that come to the festivals that look for the films, or is that just like just a bragging rights thing? Like, I won this award at a festival. It's a bit of both. Well, one, if you get into one of the major film festivals that is also a market, which there are only a few, Cannes, South by Southwest, TIFF, and I think Tribeca might have a market. I might be wrong about that. But I know at least those for sure have actual film markets there as well. There's also, and so those are the places that have actually both film, like the film festival, and there's actually buyers in an actual market there. Our experience with what we did was and oftentimes when you're at those festivals, you maybe meet a sales agent, or maybe you meet somebody from a particular distributor. Our journey wasn't exactly like that. We had through Tim and his connection at AFI, we linked up with sales agents called The Coven. They also sold like the Terrifier movies and stuff like that. And there was a personal connection there. So that we linked up with them, and they basically took the film to a couple of markets. One of the other big markets is AFM, American Film Market, which is in LA, which is basically where it's like just like a hotel room, like a big banquet thing where there's a bunch of tables with all these film distributors and sales agents and stuff. And they're all just like basically hawking their wares, like, which is pretty wild. And they're just got like posters, and they set up meetings and talk about stuff. And, I think given we had a bit of a challenge because our film is, again, like it's not clear cut genre, and it's not clear cut horror, and it's about a really weird American subculture and like all those things. So we didn't have like this major buyer or anything. We did get distribution through a company called Freestyle. And they got it on a lot of the, they're an aggregator that got it, put it on a lot of these places like Apple and Amazon and stuff. And now it's, streaming on Tubi and as well. But we've had a struggle getting some like international sales, but we are actually now on YouTube in UK and Europe, where you can buy and rent it from YouTube. And then in a few next week, Canada will finally have a distribution deal in Canada as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I can see the rest of the world just falling in love with the shit, man, because they think Americans are crazy anyway. So if you show them this, they'll be like, "Oh my god."
I agree. I think it's just what at least the struggle we've had is it's that same thing of, somebody said it's like you can't make a film to try to please anybody other than yourself, because if you make it trying to please someone else, you probably won't succeed, and you'll probably be unhappy with it. And two, the other thing is like, who really knows what people want? Like they don't know what they want,
right.
But all these kind of buyers have these like things, and it's like, because of course, like everything, it's expensive, and so they're looking for the most sure thing they can. But what's a sure thing, and who's going to know what's ever? I mean, if you would have told people that you're like in the early 2000s that the biggest hit indie movie would be about this nerdy guy from the middle, Napoleon Dynamite, if you would have pitched that movie, no one would say like, yes, let's invest a lot of money in Napoleon Dynamite. But you're like, but this movie was a huge hit, right? But that's what I mean. People don't really know what they want until they get it. Yeah. And so, and the other thing is that the streaming world has really made things much more difficult, because there's just not, when Napoleon Dynamite came out, there were so many less films being made, and there was so many less places for it to go. So because of that sort of exclusivity made it like where the few things that are out there get bigger. Now, if you look up, just for instance, you can make a small horror movie in the 2000s and it may find a huge audience. Now there's like so many horror movies that are made, that it has to be really unique. And it's an interesting thing. I mean, I think that a lot of good films get kind of, even films that are distributed and are they just kind of get lost, because they're lost in the sort of shuffle, and everyone's just trying to get that sure thing, which again, what is that?
What, can you submit a film to Netflix if you get one made? Like, how does that work? Do they have their own market or something?
Yeah, I mean, Netflix is also a different thing too. Netflix deals with their stuff. I mean, Amazon, you certainly can submit, and you can essentially just make something and put it up on Amazon. A lot of the other places that you put it, they're either you kind of don't have the contacts early on to do them. And when you saying to sort of the way you would sort of submit something to Netflix, so to speak, would be like at one of these markets, like at AFM or Con or something like that. And you'd go up to them and be whatever, but Netflix, of course, being the kind of titan that they are, one, they're much less interested in licensing other films unless it's a massive hit now. They'll want to license something if it was a really big hit, but typically their focus is going to be on their own content that they produce because it's just more economical for them. It's vertically integrated. So there's not, you're not paying this huge ticket price for something else. But at the same time, they are those big ones like, Hitman, for instance, was a really big buy. It was like a $20 million buy. The Richard Linklater movie was shot here in New Orleans. That was a really big like Netflix buy at but also like Linklater's like put out his last 2 or 3 movies with he's doing this one and he's doing his next one, Nouvelle Vague, is also like, he's kind of got a relationship with them. So it's not really, sure you can, but I don't, there's no like email for submission. I'm pretty sure most of it is at one of these markets, and it's more like they'll come to you. But the other thing about Netflix is that Netflix has a really long licensing contract too. So in some ways for an independent film, it can or can't be the best thing. But typically I think they license it for like 5 years. I may be wrong about that, but they license it for much longer than a lot of these places. Now, those are going to be the bigger deals. A Hulu and Netflix, somebody like that licensing your film is going to be where you're going to make some real money. But it's not like, it's kind of got to like hit at this level. It's kind of got to hit on its own and then get there. But certain streamers,
that seems counterintuitive though.
You're 100% correct.
Like how do you make a film that's a success and then want success? And
it only, yes, you're hitting on something exactly correct. Yes. But there are some like cool, smaller streamers too, like say like Shudder, for instance. Shudder has done like a really good job for horror film and has really ended up being a place that if you can, if they like it and it hits there, then they will license it, and they license more things as exclusives. So it's interesting because the playing field has gotten a little bit more level, but at the same time, the Titans kind of like are who they are.
They're trying to hold power, basically.
Of course.
Yeah. Someone was telling me one time that, because I was submitting one of my films to a festival, and they said that it had to be the first time it had shown.
Yeah, a premiere.
Like, how am I going to submit to other festivals if this is the first one it's ever?
Yeah, so one of the things about a festival is that the only thing when you make your film, the only real like the only thing you as the filmmaker have to offer is the premiere status. So yes, if you were going to get into Sundance wants to premiere it because they want to be the one to have the exclusive showing, because that's what's going to, and their Sundance. They don't want to play something that TIFF has also shown, but TIFF also wants the exclusive too.
Yeah.
And so everybody wants the exclusive. And that's what I mean when it comes to the struggle of doing the film festival thing, because sometimes you may like have to turn down a festival because you're holding your premiere status for a potentially better one. But then you're like, but if I turn this one down, then I'm turning them down. And so you don't really know what it is. So it's a challenge, and that's part of the give and take of it. So that's why it can take so long, because you kind of have to like set your sights high and get your rejections or your not accepteds from those other festivals before you move on to the other ones. Now, we were really lucky too. We ended up, we had 2 things. Like we got a New Orleans Film Festival, and then right after we got into Splat Film Festival in Poland. And I had first told New Orleans it was going to be the world premiere. And then I was like, well, wait, actually, is it okay with you if I go world premiere in Warsaw and then you'll have the US premiere? And they were very cool about it. Okay. And so some festivals are kind of cool about it, especially if you kind of like talk to them about it. And really, they just really want any kind of premiere that they can put at the end of it. So like when we played in Boston at the Boston Underground Film Festival, they were like, oh, we got the Eastern premiere. So even though it played, it still has some like, that still has a little bit of weight for them.
Yeah.
And then Calgary was like, this is the Canadian premiere. So it's like, there's still a little bit of like, as long as they can claim that, then it just looks good on their program.
Right. Marketing.
Yeah.
I like it.
So it's a weird thing, but it is part of it.
So is there anything out there, any advice you want to give to young filmmakers?
Yeah, I would say the things I would say would be, do it as soon as you can, because you're always going to make mistakes and you're always going to be learning. And so get it together and just do it. And there really are a lot of ways to do it now. I was just telling some of my graduating seniors, I was like, y'all, because they have like a really good nexus of friends, like this group that they all work together. And I'm like, y'all should get together and pool all your resources and pool all your stuff and try to make a movie, make a feature, because a feature has, value beyond a short, right? Actual monetary value. Yeah. For a short film, for the most part, the value is for the filmmaker. Whereas a feature, just like, it just opens other doors and gets you in other places. They see you as legit, I also think though, if you can only put together a short film, do it too. And maybe it's better. I know other filmmakers, like there's a filmmaker I met in the, film festival circuit, and she has made like, multiple short films in the past couple of years, and they've all been really good. And they've really she has become kind of a star of the sort of genre independent film festival circuit because of her shorts are really good. And so that's another way that if you can do it and you can afford it, then to make, just really work on it. It's really about what the numbers, because it's just all so expensive to do it. But either of those ways, I would say either make a feature as soon as you can, or make a plan to try to make some shorts and get out there. Because what this filmmaker, what she's doing is she's going and getting to know all the people at the festivals ahead of time. So when she makes her feature, she now has all these festivals that she's played at and all these people that she knows. So that in many ways should get her a preferred viewing, because really the game is to get to the festivals and get to know the people, because the people at the festivals are going to the other thing that happens with festivals is people start sharing films between festivals. They start talking to each other. So it's just, and it's really wild how that happens. I just remember getting a DM on Instagram one time, and this person was she was like, hey, I'm a film festival. I watched some films for film festival and I loved your movie. And I do this weird, this Discord thing where all these crazy people come together and watch a movie together. And it's always really insane movies. And she's like, it's got all these members, we'll pay you a little bit. You want to screen your film? And I was like, of course, And so that was just a really cool thing. And how did that come about? She watched the film for a film festival, and after was then reaching out and whatever. And that really is part of how it happens. I mean, for instance, the film's going to play. We did some, because the other thing I'll say, we didn't get into it, but we kind of did our own theatrical run, which is another thing that I learned a lot from. But I was surprised how it worked out in a good way. But the point is, again, getting to know those people. Anyway, we were not able to get a contact at the time when we were doing the initial release of the film with Alamo Drafthouse. But then recently, a person I met at Boston Underground Film Festival, I saw at Overlook Film Festival here in New Orleans. She was like, I was just talking about your film. She's like, I want to play it for, at Alamo Drafthouse for Weird Wednesdays. I was like, okay. So what I mean is, it's you got to just get yourself into that world. Yeah. And because it's just how it happens. I mean, it's only because people know each other that anything happens. I mean, it's people call it nepotism, whatever. I mean, we met each other. That's why we're sitting here. Yeah. It's just who you meet and who you know is how you move about in this life. So I would say, as much as, because it's one of the hardest things, I think, as a filmmaker, we want to sit in our little creative bubble and be in our little dark hole and watch our movies and do our thing, but we don't want to network and meet people and be out. And that's genuinely one of the most important parts of it. So I would say, make something. Advice for people would be, make something as soon as you can, and do it with as much passion and as you can. fight through and finish making it. Because like you said earlier, there are so many of those projects. How many times have you worked on something that has never come out?
Yeah.
And it's like, and see it through, because seeing it through is how you really learn about what you did.
Dude, I'll tell you, even in some of the films that I acted in when I first started, it was, we were in UCA in Arkansas, and UCA has a film school there. And some of the films we worked on, they were so fun as actors to be in these films, and they had such good concepts, but then they would just never get made. And it's like, so we just wasted our time on set for several days doing nothing.
Yeah. And I mean, it's frustrating for kind of everybody involved. Yeah. And I think it, like I said, it's just also like, you really have to just take it through the whole process before you really have learned. And I think, apparently, so like Robert Bresson apparently said, like, you make 3 different movies. You make one movie when you write it, you make a different movie when you shoot it, and you make a different movie when you edit it. And I agree with that, but I think there's actually 2 other steps. I think that you make a different movie when you conceive of it, because I think the writing process like reveals something else, and it becomes another thing other than just this like idea. And then I think the final 5th step is after you've edited it, you really don't even know what you've made until you show it to people, because they tell you what you've made, because as a filmmaker, you're so myopic, and it's like a film is you. It's like it's your thoughts and soul on the screen in a lot of ways. And so you really can't judge it accurately. So taking a step back and letting other people tell you what you've done, that's really where you like really learn. And you won't do that if you'll never get to that part of the process if you don't finish it. And then the last piece of advice is definitely for younger filmmakers, or for any filmmaker, is watch a ton of movies. I just believe that the more you watch, the more references, the more things, the more you understand filmmaking. And I mean, really vary it up. Even if your favorite films are one genre, like watch something that's outside of your genre, like really push yourself to watch a lot of stuff, because your favorite films and your favorite filmmakers are doing that. And they, in their films, are referencing 5 or 6 different things or more. And, and watch classics. I mean, do it all. Like, go watch silent, watch classics, watch foreign, watch everything. Get your hands on a lot of stuff. Don't just go for just like the easy entertainment thing, go for something that's like, just expand your horizons, because this is our medium. And again, you're going to see, even though you may enjoy and be entertained by a film, if you start to look at the films that those filmmakers are referencing, you're going to get even more out of it, I think. Yeah.
Well, Nathan, I appreciate you coming in today, and I look forward to seeing your new film that you come out with.
Thank you.
But where can they find it again?
So you can find Offramp Film at offrampfilm.com. We have t-shirts and hats, and you can buy our
I'll link it in the description too.
Awesome. Thank you. Our Blu-ray that just came out from Refuge Films. So you can, if you're overseas, you can go to Refuge Films. If you're here, go to the merch page on our offrampfilm.com. And if not, you can also follow us on all socials, or Offramp Film everywhere: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all those things.
Awesome, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.